You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's October the 21st, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. We're live here at the Legacy420.com news desk and at paceradio.net. Good morning, Rev Cindy. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty fantastic. How are you doing, Al?
I'm not doing too bad myself. Actually, I'll be doing better later on as the warm temperatures get warmer and that frost that we had earlier in the week or last week is gone.
Yeah, we've got some beautiful weather heading, in our area as well. Very strange for October to be going out with 20-degree weather.
Yes, yeah, but it is nice. I can remember Halloween days of snow when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, I can remember like having to get a Halloween costume big enough to fit over the snowsuit, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, because it always sucked having to put a costume on and covering it up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, what's new and exciting before we get into the news?
I went to a sound bath last night. That's new and exciting. It was pretty amazing. I don't know if anybody watching has ever done that, but if you ever see one creep up in your area, I highly recommend going. It's a wonderful way of doing some healing. Music and of course sound is a beautiful natural healer.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's just sound. It's not music, right? It's just sound.
Just sound. Yeah, the gentleman that ran it last night, he works with frequencies. So he played two particular frequencies, the air and the earth frequencies. And, we sat in these sounds for about an hour. And then he also did some work with our chakras as certain frequencies over certain chakras. So it was pretty incredible. It was the first time I've been to one kind of like that. So it was really neat.
Yeah, different. Yeah, I've actually I don't think I even heard of a sound healers that do stuff like this. So
yeah, when I was
every day, right?
when I was in Toronto on my way home from Mexico, actually, I found one there that was fairly inexpensive. It was $15, and it was held in the basement of the lounge of a legal store. They had a little like lounge. You can't smoke or vape in it or anything, but they run things out of it with a park across the street where you can go smoke. So they had a sound bath in there while I was in Toronto, and I took part in that, and that was pretty cool too.
Interesting. I have to learn more.
Yeah.
All right, on with the news. We're going to start with the first story of the day. It comes to us from Mugglehead Magazine. Headline there says cannabis sales spiked by 21% in Canada's most populated province. And Cindy, I'll let you do the next one. Sorry.
No worries. Canada's most densely populated province was significantly smokier during H1 than it was last year, according to new data from the Ontario Cannabis Store, the OCS. I was about to say somebody's name that was messaging me. Ontario observed a 21% increase in cannabis sales by volume year over year during the first half of 2024. The province raked in over 1 billion, that's with a B, folks, representing 11.8% increase in revenue.
The number of dispensaries in the province increased too, by 3% year over year. As of June 20th, Ontario has 1,721 certified retailers. A 22% increase in the number of dispensaries within the Greater Toronto area was notable during H1. There are a total of 250 now. However, the quantity of shops situated in the city of Toronto decreased by 3% to 388. 11 closed their doors during that period.
Wow.
Now,
The
Greater Toronto area, that includes not only Toronto, but that's all the other cities around it.
Yeah, like the GTA is all of the
surrounding area, the burbs.
the burbs. That's right, the suburbs.
Yeah.
The OCS sent over 204 million grams of weed to authorized retailers during the 6-month duration, an 18.5% spike from last year. Ontario's government-owned distributor added a variety of products to its catalog during the first half as well.
Yeah, the president, Chris Jones, recently says the OCS has expanded its product catalog, significantly adding over 1,000 new items from the licensed producers. And then on Thursday, the province's cannabis distributor and Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario opened up a fake dispensary in downtown Toronto. It will be temporarily situated at 474 Queen Street West.
Yes. Through this new Buzzkill campaign, initiated on the 6th-year anniversary of domestic legalization, they aim to educate consumers about the dangers posed by illicit markets. Products found in this fake pop-up shop will be clearly labeled with unwanted ingredients you might be exposed to by buying cannabis goods from unauthorized retailers.
Yeah, Toronto Star writer Josh Robin, he says that some mold with your joint, sir? No. How about a nice buzz with a side of E. coli or pesticide? A so-called pesticide beverage will be available to teach patrons about the harmful impact of unregulated cannabis drinks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What gives this cannabis-infused cider its signature oomph? We like to think it's love, the label says, but realistically, it's probably our unregulated use of toxic pesticides. The educational dispensary will be open until October 20th.
That was actually just closed yesterday. I did see a post online about the store. Jonathan Hirsch.
Yeah, he went.
He went. Took some pictures of some of the packaging, as well as some of the labels that were there. Get extra fuzz in your peach fuzz rings and stuff like that. So it was interesting.
It is, yeah. I
And
find
it was full of it was full of industry people. There wasn't really any, as if, its idea was for people to walk in suspecting it's a real store, and then they would educate them that this is, so on and so forth. But from the way Jonathan's post was, as if people knew, so people didn't go in, other than those within the industry.
Yeah. I think if they're going to do this, they should also have articles on the companies that have been sued and have had to pay out, the legal producing companies that have been sued and having to pay out due to injuring their patients, me being one of them.
Yeah,
we talked about tinnitus earlier before the show, and I had some tainted cannabis from one of these companies and ended up with tinnitus. It's what gave me the tinnitus.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. I don't know where I got mine from, but I just know it's there. It's ringing right now. So, all righty. On with the next story. Here you go.
Yeah, coming to us from the Waterloo Region Record. Waterloo Psychedelic Assisted Psychotherapy Clinic redefines mental health treatment. Yeah.
Yes, a new Waterloo clinic is offering psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy for people suffering from deep-rooted mental illness. Field Trip Health's ketamine-assisted psychotherapy clinic at 180 Columbia Street opened its doors on Wednesday with an alternative form of treatment using the dissociative drug to allow people to dig deeper into their mind to process conditions like depression, PTSD, and manage chronic pain.
Alternative, however, isn't a word in Ian Ruberry's playbook. When people think of alternative medicine, they think of things that aren't really proven scientifically in the medical realm. Ketamine is an evidence-based treatment for treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, and many other mental health applications, Field Trip Health CEO said, adding that he considers treatment-resistant as someone who has tried at least 2 different medications that haven't worked.
Ketamine is a Scheduled 1 controlled drug, but is used by medical professionals and veterinarians. I talked to my local veterinarian, and yeah, he uses it. So we had a big conversation about it, actually. And as an anesthetic for surgery, and that's what he said to me. It also produces a sense of mind-body dissociation and alters how a person experiences sight and sound. Ketamine is legal when prescribed by a doctor, stated the Ketamine Assisted Therapy Association of Canada, and is used off-label by the clinic.
The psychedelic aspect allows you to view your experiences from a different perspective, allowing for final processing. Why it works for so many different mental health indications is because it makes the brain a fertile ground for a profound and lasting change, he said. He said the clinic isn't for someone who's facing mental health challenges for the first time, but for someone who hasn't found success with modern therapies.
Rubery believes it is a better substitute to possibly taking weeks of different antidepressants to see which one works, and then taking more medication to offset the symptoms of the drug. Sounds like with the cannabis, how we had to go through a lot of process. Try everything else first. Right? So instead of symptom management, what this treatment focuses on is getting down to the root cause and allowing people to disarm their ego in a safe setting with experienced medical professionals, according to Rubery.
Rosalie Shorney, who is a nurse clinic manager at the Waterloo location, said these sessions are amazing to watch as people open up more and more through each session. The ketamine changes the way someone remembers and reviews events, reducing negative thought patterns and enhancing cognitive flexibility, she said. It's really helping them create a more optimal state for change. You can see a difference in people's demeanor when they come back again, she said.
Ketamine may seem like a radical treatment option, especially since coming to the forefront when it's factored into the death of Friends actor Matthew Perry. But Rubery says the drug has been around since the 1960s, and there are ketamine clinics popping up throughout the GTA. Field Trip Health is in the midst of its own expansion footsteps with clinics in Vancouver, Ottawa, Thunder Bay, Sault Ste. Marie, and Montreal, and another opening this week in Hamilton as well.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Exactly.
Yeah. The protocol at each is the same. Rubery noted the most successful clinical trial to date has shown 8 therapy sessions with ketamine used in 6 sessions. The first session is an hour meeting with a therapist to build a rapport. The next 6 are 2.5 hours long, occurring twice a week for 3 weeks, with a 30-minute final session to reassess if therapy goals have been achieved.
The 6 ketamine sessions, Rubery says, have shifted from a previous incarnation of therapy where patients were given ketamine, a sleep mask, and noise-canceling headphones and asked to revisit troubling past experiences. The next day, they would have a virtual session with a therapist. The pioneer sessions at the Vancouver and Toronto clinics are what Rubery calls Field Trip Iteration number 1. The clinics went into bankruptcy in March of 2023, allowing Rubery's group to purchase them.
Now, therapists are involved in the sessions to make the experience pleasant and can help deal with challenging events, he said. As well, the clinics are now physician-led. He said response rates at the clinics by patients is between 80 to 90%. Wow.
People could essentially just keep getting ketamine treatments to feel better for an extended period of time, like antidepressants. But that's not what they do, he says. What it says is that we're taking a very different approach where we're pairing it with psychotherapy to try to use that for reprocessing of traumatic events in the brain so that people can move on and not just deal with symptoms all the time. That sounds like almost like a instead of just always taking something to cover it up.
Yeah. Yeah, the cost of each session is $525 to $575 plus the $180 hourly rate for a therapist. Ruberry said they found some patients' health care coverage from work will cover the therapist costs. Besides ketamine, the clinic also, look at this, offers MDMA and psilocybin-assisted psychotherapies. While both medicines are illegal, Ruberry said there's an application process through Health Canada on compassionate grounds, which is ruled on a case-by-case basis. Yes, we all know the SAP program.
Yeah.
And an example is someone with terminal cancer looking to deal with end-of-life distress, if they get back to them on time.
Correct. Exactly. Get out of the way there, pop-up. We have an evidence-based guide. It's pretty rigorous, and it's for every indication that we treat. Ruberry goes on to say that we don't try anything new at the clinic. We're not experimenting here. That's definitely not in line with our ethics, and we're not allowed to do that anyways. But what we do is we look at the research that's coming out. We're scouring it all the time. And once we have enough, we think that we can do more benefit than harm, then we're helping our clients where we can.
Wow.
So you can get MDA and psilocybin assisted therapy.
Providing
right
you
here in
get approved by SAP first.
What's that?
Providing that you get approved by SAP first.
Yeah, on those two end of things, correct. The ketamine, it doesn't sound like they go through. It's not. They don't need.
No, as long as your doctor prescribes it, then you're good.
Correct.
So a doctor can legally prescribe ketamine, but they can't legally prescribe psilocybin or MDMA. You have to get permission from the government, and they only accept people who are at end of life. And even then, we know of cases that people are still waiting years later for their reapproval, like their re-up type idea, not their first time applying, their second or third time, and they're still waiting years later. So
yeah, exactly. It's not a overnight process. There's no doubt about that. So, all right, next story.
Coming to us from StratCan, Cannabis Research Lounge in Toronto exploring cannabis and music.
Yeah, a new cannabis consumption lounge is now open in downtown Toronto, and it's looking to explore the relationship between cannabis consumption and music. Operating alongside cannabis retailer Body and Spirit Cannabis and Lit Research, Club Lit is a new legally operating cannabis consumption lounge at 361 Yonge Street.
Interesting.
I always knew about Lit Research, but now this is a separate venue from that.
Yeah. Like its neighbor at Lit Research, the Club Lit Lounge operates for research purposes only. An example of that research is a new observational study in collaboration with Toronto Metropolitan University to better understand how cannabis influences auditory experiences and music enjoyment. The new program is launching with a grant from the Science of Music, Auditory Research and Technology, SMART, which is a lab at TMU, located just steps away from Club Lit.
Made possible by an Accelerate grant from Canadian nonprofit MidAx, the Smart Lab will utilize the new cannabis consumption space to explore how the level of high may affect how a listener engages with music. They say that the research we conduct in this space will break new ground, says Frank Russo, director of the Smart Lab. I am particularly interested in the concept of absorption in music and to see how it might be altered while under the influence. Looking ahead, I can see how this might even open new avenues of research on music-based treatments for mental health.
Club Lit is located on the same block as TMU Student Learning Center, providing the center with more immediate access to a real-world laboratory for cannabis research and education. Al Shefsky, president of Cannadigum, which operates Lit Research, said, "We are excited to collaborate with TMU on this groundbreaking research initiative at Club Lit. We are leveraging our team's extensive cannabis knowledge and expertise to enhance consumer experiences supporting academic research that has the potential to improve people's enjoyment and quality of life."
Chef's Guy also owns and operates a neighboring cannabis store, Body and Spirit Cannabis, and is the founder of Lit Research. Launched in 2022, the latter has been hosting regular sessions that seek to help cannabis producers and brands provide a unique, value-added educational experience to anyone looking to learn more about their products. The Health Canada licensed facility, research facility, yeah, it's licensed by Health Canada, says it has administered and collected data from over 12,000 individual product testing sessions to date. Canada's new consumption space, Club Lit, is located adjacent to, but separate from Leaf Research, and bills itself as a real-world observational laboratory where participants may consume cannabis while enjoying music and authentic cannabis culture, all in support of academic research and education.
Interesting. Yeah, so just so you know, it is if you're in Toronto, it is located at 361 Yonge Street, Unit C, which is in the heart of downtown Toronto. And if you find this, and this is on our page, you can just click this little part there, and it'll take you to more information on Club Lit.
Yeah, there you go. Bunch of information right there. PDF of it, 3 pages. That appeared in that link there, which didn't show up on the screen. But nonetheless, it's good to know. Now, I wonder, like, is it only during certain times or certain events? Can people just show up there on a Friday night?
Well, I mean, I clicked that thing, and I haven't read it because I literally just clicked it.
Right.
It tells you a little bit about.
There's some. Yeah, it's a 3-page PDF. If anybody's wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go through it just see if you see
more information about Club Lit. You can, so I don't think it says as I'm sitting here scrolling through.
Okay.
But there is. I mean, before my next trip to Toronto, of course, I will be emailing them to find out.
Find out, yeah, exactly. See what's going on. Alrighty, let's make our way to our last story before we go to break. And there you go.
Yeah, so it's coming to us from Microsoft Start.
Up. Now it is.
It's almost up. You got it?
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, it's a Microsoft website, so it's being a pain in the butt.
Yeah. So coming to us from Microsoft Start, tripping on nothing.
Ooh. Ibogaine, a psychedelic compound found in plants native to Central Africa, is notorious for the intensity of trips it reduces. Those who consume it are plunged into vivid hallucinations, often preceded by a loud buzzing noise that lasts between 24 and 48 hours. In one case report, a 29-year-old woman from Gabon met her dead relatives and later looked into a mirror and saw a woman crying and holding a baby. A middle-aged American man experienced himself from the perspective of Mexican little boy, and I'm praying on the side of the road. When he opened his eyes, one of the people in the room appeared to resemble a big praying mantis. Late last year, Arthur Julian, a 32-year-old research scientist at the Institute for Advanced Consciousness Studies, was decidedly not taking ibogaine, but was ingesting something similar. He had obtained, come on, stay still, tabernanthalog, a research molecule designed to mimic. What's that?
Oh, I'm just reading it with you. I'm interested. That's all. Sorry.
Okay, a research molecule designed to mimic ibogaine's chemical structure and potential effects on neuroplasticity, but not cause any hallucinations. About 45 minutes after he swallowed his dose, Juliana started to feel a kind of spacious attention. He told me. On a walk outside, he found that anywhere he looked appeared like a perfectly framed photograph, distinct and standing on its own. When he went home for lunch, he ate a bell pepper in the slowest and most intentional manner I had ever eaten a vegetable in my life.
Interesting. Tabernanthalog is part of a wave of drug development that draws inspiration from psychedelics while attempting to remove or refine their trips. Many of the compounds involved are targeted towards some medical purpose. Tabernanthalog, for example, is being researched as a treatment for substance use disorder. Such work has led to debates among psychedelic therapists and researchers about how important a drug experience is for mental health outcomes. But Giuliani's encounter with this medicine provokes a more complex question. If novel psychedelics and pseudodelics tickle brain receptors in a way that changes people's subjective experience, perhaps in a manner less intense than traditional psychedelics and more on par with prescription or over-the-counter drugs, can one confidently say that the people who take them aren't tripping? As the pursuit of non-hallucinogenic psychedelics advances, the definition of a trip as something induced by a discrete set of substances is set to evolve alongside them.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm just saying, my screen is just bouncing like crazy, but I got it settled. These days, the hottest new psychedelic drugs might be the ones that feel as close to nothing as possible. In 2022, scientists made a trip-free analog of LSD to research as an antidepressant. Another is being investigated as a treatment for cluster headaches. This month, the biotech company Bright Minds Biosciences announced that its new compound, which interacts with the same serotonin receptors as psilocybin and LSD, but doesn't cause hallucinations, had a similar efficacy to morphine at reducing pain. The Federal Defense Advanced Research Project Agency is developing novel compounds for chronic depression and post-traumatic stress that are not hallucinogenic, but are inspired by psychedelic compounds. These compounds are mostly being tested in research labs and administered in clinical trials, but curious psychonauts have said online that they've purchased their own samples to see just how non-hallucinogenic they are. Josh Hardman, the founder of the publication Psychedelic Alpha, collected online reports from a dozen people who claimed to have tried tapernathalog. Many of the resulting experiences sound trip-like or trip-adjacent. One person said it was basically the body high of psychedelics without the visuals. Another said everything had a deeper layer of thinking, almost like I had unlocked a childish part of my mind that I had long forgotten. They go into a long explanation there about this fellow David Olson. He's a biochemist at UC Davies.
Yeah.
And said that he considers it dangerous to order drugs made by clandestine chemists on the internet.
Defining a psychedelic experience was difficult even before the introduction of these novel compounds. The word comes from the psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond, who argued in a 1957 letter to Aldous Huxley that similar effects could arise from drug use, epilepsy, schizophrenia, starvation, vitamin deficiency, yoga practices, and diverse dancing. It's all one to me, Osmond wrote. Aidan Lyon, a philosopher at Leiden University in the Netherlands and the author of Psychedelic Experience Revealing the Mind, has argued that breathwork, meditation, and even engaging with a piece of art could count as psychedelic experiences, as well as sound healing. And it can all do that. Peter Hughes, a philosopher of mind and metaphysics at the University of Exeter in the UK, agrees with Osmond that a trip should be defined by phenomenology, not pharmacology. For example, he told me a number of people have tried to define psychedelic as operating on the serotonin receptors, but that immediately can't be true because it would exclude Salvia divinorum, which is a hallucinogenic plant in the mint family. Mike Jay, who is a historian and the author of Psychonauts, Drugs and the Making of Modern Mind, told me that the effects of psychedelic analog may be constructed as either trips or side effects, depending on when and how people experience them.
These debates are more than academic. Earlier this year, the FDA rejected an application for a psychedelic drug, MDMA, to be used to assist psychotherapy for PTSD. The biotechnology company Compass Pathways is poised to seek approval for psilocybin as a medication for treatment of resistant depression as soon as 2025. Medical interest in hallucinogenic drugs is currently higher than it's been in decades, and in order to understand how psychedelic assisted therapy might help or harm people, researchers are eager to tease apart psychedelic experience from any underlying biological effects. Perhaps certain aspects of a trip could improve or reduce a drug's efficacy against, say, depression or PTSD. If so, researchers need to be able to measure and define those effects to design specifically treatment protocols. The company of Mindset Design Labs even hopes to isolate and enhance the parts of psychedelic trip that are therapeutically useful. If they're successful, you could perhaps one day take a pill just for the psychedelic induced sensations. Uh-oh.
Sensation of limitless unity without the ego loss that sometimes accompanies it. That's all you miss. You're welcome. In a recent Nature Reviews psychological paper, Johns Hopkins researchers argued that the field needs a new, rigorously validated scale of psychedelic experiences to accurately capture what people go through when they're tripping. There's too much variation among these existing measures. David B. Yadin, one of the study's authors and a co-writer of the varieties of spiritual experience, told me. The five-dimensional altered states of consciousness questionnaire scale, for example, includes the measure of oceanic boundlessness, but it's not mentioned in the inventory of non-ordinary experiences, which includes visions of ghosts in its rubric. Non-hallucinogenic, conscious-altering experiences, like those reported to result from tabernanthalog, use sound far away from such mystical experiences and more akin to how some people might feel after drinking a glass of wine or a strong cup of coffee. Many of us are just filling our bodies with substances that cause acute alterations in consciousness of various degrees, says Chuck Riazon, who's a psychiatry professor at the University of Wisconsin. Millions of Americans take prescription drugs that affect their psychology, and their numbers are only growing. Psychedelic-inspired medicines might end up resembling many other FDA-approved psychoactive pharmaceuticals or the wide variety of other things which humans regularly modify our consciousness, such as supplements, caffeine, alcohol, meditation, exercise, sex, and sleep, or lack thereof.
I told Rayson that I'm sensitive to caffeine, and if I drank 3 cups of coffee, I would likely have an intense physical and mental experience. Would that be a trip? The real marker of a trip, he told me, is that it is different from one's typical waking awareness, in which a way that it produces longer-term changes in perspective or behavior. After my coffee, I might feel high, he said. A day later, other than thinking about how odd it was that the coffee hit me so hard would it just produces longer-term changes in perspective and behavior. After my coffee, I might feel high, he said. A day later, other than thinking about how odd it was that the coffee hit me so hard, would your life change? Experience would come and go, but psychedelics tend not to do that. A trip, however it is, or whatever it is, stays with people. Juliana's time under the alleged influence of tabernanthalog certainly. Oh, come on, screen.
You want me to finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, certainly seems to have stayed with him. I entered into what was clearly an altered state of consciousness, and I stayed there for some number of hours. And then I came out of it, he told me. It was, he added, a reminder that there isn't just one kind of consciousness, but many to inhabit. In his 1902 book, The Varieties of Religious Experience, the psychologist William James wrote that one quality of a true transformative experience is that it's inevitable. Hughes told me something similar. One thing that certainly distinguishes psychedelic experience from ordinary states of consciousness is the fact that you can have experiences for which there exists No words, he said. Researchers will continue trying to break down the inevitable. But in the meantime, Yen said, identifying a trip might ultimately come down to what he's called the orgasm test. If you have to ask if you had one, you probably didn't.
There you go. Yeah, that got jumpy. I couldn't follow along. So
I hate how some of the pages do that to us.
Yeah, it was just all these pop-ups and everything. It's just crazy. So it's a little hard to sometimes just go on this trying to read it, right? So, all right, time for us to take a break, and I'm gonna need some medication after that. You're watching Psychedelics Cannabis Educational News right here at PACEradio.net.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at PACEradio.net.
Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, open Monday to Friday from 10 till 7 p.m. or by chance. Check out our flags, our t-shirts, plus our hats, and look of that supply of rolling papers, plus much more. We've got bongs and your favorite herbal vaporizers. Look at all the incense we have, as well as for those who collect knives, check out these knives in our collection. And while you're here, stop in to see Shay at the piercing room, where you can get poked by Shay. Daily deals, check them out. Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford, Ontario.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at PACEradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. Are you looking for non-stop, continuous cannabis and psychedelic programming? If you are, then turn your browsers to 420radio.ca or PACEradio.net, where you will find the 420 Pace re-rolled Saturday. Everything gets started at 8 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at PACEradio.net.
Hey, we're back for a medication break. I'm ready to bring you 4 more stories.
We are?
Oh, yes, just a second. I didn't get it up. I was too busy medicating. This story that we've got here, last year we talked about, we reported on people being hung, death penalties for cannabis around the world. And that's some of the stuff that Global Marijuana March in Toronto was touched on as well. So here we go. Next story.
Coming to us from CNN World, exclusive. Inside the prison that executes people for supplying cannabis.
Here we go. Find out what it's like to be in one of those places. Though he is provided with a straw mat, Matthew says he prefers to sleep on the concrete floor of his cell in the maximum security wing of Singapore's Chanjing prison. He says it's more cooling that way. He's a 41-year-old former school teacher who was sentenced to more than 7 years in prison and 7 strokes of the cane for selling methamphetamine.
CNN met Matthew, who spoke on condition that his last name be withheld, during an exclusive tour of Changi prison provided by Singapore authorities, and they defended this as they defended the city-state's uncompromising position on drugs. In recent years, dozens of U.S. states and countries ranging from Canada to Portugal have decriminalized cannabis.
But Singapore imposes a mandatory death penalty for people convicted of supplying certain amounts of illicit drugs. 15 grams of heroin, 30 grams of cocaine, 250 grams of methamphetamine, and 500 grams of cannabis. 500 grams of cannabis. A pound of cannabis. Death penalty. A 64-year-old man was hanged for drug offenses this week. The 4th person to be hanged so far this year.
Oh my goodness. The harsh sentencing puts the wealthy city-state in a small club of countries that includes Iran, North Korea, and Saudi Arabia, which execute criminals convicted of drug experience. K. Shanmugam, who is Singapore's Minister for Home Affairs and Law, characterizes the country's war on drugs as an existential battle and claims any easing of the government's hardline stance could lead to chaos.
Look around the world, he says. Anytime there have been a certain laxity in the approach to drugs, homicides go up. Killings, torture, kidnappings, that goes up. What? Visitors to Singapore got a stark warning about the island's zero tolerance for drugs as international flights descend for landing.
Drug trafficking may be punishable by death, a woman's voice announces over the loudspeaker, amid instructions to passengers to buckle seatbelts and stow away tray tables. Many citizens of this Southeast Asian city-state are also aware that it is illegal for them to consume drugs overseas.
Yeah. Returning Singaporeans and permanent residents run the risk of facing drug tests upon arrival. Shanmugam says that when you come back, and if there is a reason to believe you have taken drugs, you could be tested.
Oh my goodness. Per capita, Singapore is one of the world's wealthiest countries. With a population of nearly 6 million people, it has an annual GDP per capita of nearly 134,000. This regional transport and financial hub has a reputation for safety, efficiency, and strictness under de facto single-party rule.
The People's Action Party, of which Shanmugam is a member, has governed Singapore since its independence nearly 6 decades ago. Speaking from a balcony in the Home Affairs Ministry overlooking tidy neighborhoods of parks and villas, Shanmugam argues his country is potentially lucrative market in a part of Asia he says is awash with drugs.
If you are able to traffic into Singapore, the street price here compared to the street price in some other parts of the world is a magnet.
It's because it's illegal. That's why people want to get more money for it, but keep going.
Yeah. Singapore stands in relatively close proximity to the notorious Golden Triangle, the mountainous intersection of Thailand, Laos, and civil war-torn Myanmar. Last year, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime labeled the region the world's largest source of opium. Production of
phone call.
Okay, I'll keep reading. Production of methamphetamine in the region has also surged in recent years, outpacing heroin and opium. Singapore's anti-drug czar claims strict punishment serves as a deterrent to drug traffickers. Our philosophy on prisons is not the same as, say, the Scandinavian philosophy, he says. We choose to make it harsh, he adds. It's not a holiday home. It's intended to be tough. Singapore's Changi prison complex is a walled compound of guard towers and imposing gates built in the shadow of the country's main airport. More than 10,000 prisoners are held here, and according to the prison's latest annual report, most are serving time for drug offenses. CNN was given access to one floor of a maximum security wing that holds around 160 prisoners jailed for felonies ranging from drug dealing to violent crimes, including manslaughter.
A network of security cameras mounted inside and outside the individual cells and even over toilets allow just 5 guards to monitor the entire floor. At mealtimes, the metallic clang of shutting gates echoes through the cell block as the prisoner distributes meal trays through a ground level hatch at the bottom of each cell door. You can see it in the picture right there.
Authorities allowed CNN to interview only one prisoner, Matthew, the former school teacher, who said he was addicted to the same drug he was selling. His single occupancy cell is austere, measuring just 7 square meters, 75 square feet. With a squat toilet beneath a shower. Inmates are not allowed to have furniture, so there's no bed or anything to sit on.
No bed. It is also steam bath hot year-round in Singapore's tropical climate, where maximum daily temperatures rarely rise above 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. The effect of the extreme heat on prisoners has become more of a concern around the world as the temperature rises due to climate change.
You will notice there aren't any fans or aircon, Matthew explains. There are some periods of time where it's unbreathable. Asked whether the threat of death penalty had any deterrent effect on his drug dealing, Matthew said, "I would like to say yes."
But the truth is, at that point in time, I wasn't thinking about it. In fact, I was actively avoiding the whole issue of consequences. The prison's deliberately harsh conditions contrast sharply with the abundant emotional wellness messaging in the facility's common areas.
Yeah, the workshop where prisoners pack anti-dandruff shampoo and instant coffee for a small salary is plastered with motivational quotes from luminaries such as Steve Jobs and Nelson Mandela. Cartoon characters and photos of waterfalls decorate classrooms where prisoners get lessons in anger management and job training.
Officials from Singapore Prison Service says they encourage guards to think of themselves as captains of lives, helping rehabilitate the prison population. From an air-conditioned room known as the fish tank, they monitor inmates on live feeds from dozens of security cameras positioned around the prison. Ruben Long,
Go ahead.
Ruben Long, the officer in charge of the correctional unit, says the job is not without risks. Violent incidents, usually fights between inmates, take place every few weeks, he says.
There will be periods of time where they can be demanding, they can be rude, they can be, hostile to you, he adds. The Yellow Ribbon Project is a government program aimed at rehabilitating former convicts with job placement and community engagement.
Despite these efforts, Singaporean officials say roughly 1 in 5 former prisoners will likely end up back behind bars within 2 years. By comparison, 1 in 3 return to prison within 2 years in the United States, which has some of the highest activism rates in the world.
Meanwhile, there's no rehabilitation for death row inmates. Singapore executed 11 prisoners by hanging in 2022 and 5 last year, according to the latest figures. All were convicted of drug charges. Officials did not allow CNN to visit Institution A1, where more than 40 death row inmates await the same fate.
Yeah. I'm just going to jump down a bit down here. They say that outside the prison walls, relatives of death row inmates hold an agonizing vigil awaiting the fate of their loved ones. Hanlinda Benti Ismail has a shock of bleached blonde hair and sports a small stud in her left nostril.
Yeah, by her count, the 61-year-old has been in prison at least 7 times, always for drugs. Halinda said she was just 12 when she first smoked heroin. And her last arrest was in 2017 when police raided the building where she lived with her eldest son, Muhammad.
Both mother and son were convicted of narcotics. But while Helinda ended up serving 5 years, her son was sentenced to death after police caught him with 6 packets of meth and heroin. He's still in prison awaiting his execution. She says that I'm very angry with my government. Why the government doesn't give my son a chance to change his life.
I always pray to the government, give my son a second chance. Helinda is now part of a small movement of activists seeking to ban Singapore's death penalty. It's not solving anything and is just disproportionately used against some of the most marginalized and weakest people in society, says Kirsten Han, who is a journalist and activist with Transformative Justice Collective, who lobbies on behalf of death row inmates.
I feel it's just very morally wrong. Han's outspoken criticism of Singapore's system of executions has won her the personal enmity of Shanwanigan, the Home Affairs ministers.
She is one of those who romanticizes the people on death row. Shanwanigan tells CNN. However, Shanmugam confirms one of Han's observations.
Among more than 40 inmates, he says, are currently on death row, most are in the lower social-economic category. One of the 11 prisoners executed in 2022 for drug offenses was Nazri bin Legem.
I was hoping that they would give him the life sentence, but they literally hanged my brother, says his surviving sister, Nazria. She says her brother was a lifelong drug addict, but not a violent man.
She shows a series of portraits on her phone of him dressed in a brightly printed T-shirt, smiling and holding up a victory sign for the camera. Before each execution, authorities organized a professional photo shoot in which inmates trade their prison uniforms for civilian clothes.
Nazaria doesn't appreciate the gesture. It's fake happiness, she says. She says she is encouraging her adult children to leave Singapore permanently and to immigrate to Australia.
Yeah. This story keeps going on for quite a ways. I'm just looking over at the time. But they do go on. I did read through it last night, and they go on and they start to compare numbers, and because they said that their punishment is so hard that they don't have these problems, but yet when they compared the things that are going on good in Singapore, they're going on good in places where cannabis, for example, has been legalized.
Yep.
People aren't being sentenced to death for a pound of cannabis.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's a story I thought that people had to be aware of. A lot of people don't think about the fact that people do get hung for cannabis still, which is very sad. So, alrighty, next story. What's up?
Coming to us from Marijuana Moment. Maternal cannabis use not tied to child autism or developmental delays. Federally funded study published by American Medical Association shows.
Two new federally funded reports published in the Journal of American Medical Association may help allay at least some concerns around prenatal exposure to cannabis. One study found that cannabis use during early pregnancy was not associated with child autism, while the other found no association with increased risk for early childhood development delays. Both papers were published on Friday in the journal JAMA Network Open and looked at outcomes of pregnancies where maternal cannabis use was either self-reported or identified through a positive urine test for THC at the entrance to prenatal care about 2 months into gestation.
The Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD, analysts included data from 178,948 pregnancies born to 296 unique individuals between 2011 and 19. While the early development research used data from 119,000, or almost 120,000 pregnancies born to 106,000 people between early 2015 and late 2019, children were screened at various points on autism and developmental measures. In this study, maternal prenatal cannabis use was not associated with childhood ASD after adjusting for potential co-founders, said the autism study, including socio-demographic characteristics, other non-cannabis substance use, and maternal combinatories.
Yeah. Similarly, the investigation into cannabis and childhood development found that maternal cannabis use during early pregnancy was not associated with speech and language disorders, global delay, or motor delay. Both studies, which were funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, caution that their findings don't mean that using cannabis during pregnancy is safe, especially when use is frequent or heavy. Authors note, for example, that while the autism findings suggested that cannabis use during pregnancy isn't associated with autism in children overall, they say that there may be association with higher frequency use, highlighting the need for more research.
One exception to the childhood development study, meanwhile, is that researchers observed a modest inverse association between speech and language disorders when defining cannabis use based only on the urine toxicity results. No such association was seen in the self-reported use data. In line with guidance from the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and the American Academy of Pediatrics, the studies also advise that pregnant individuals should discontinue cannabis use.
Authors further recommend that pregnant individuals and those considering pregnancy should be educated on the known adverse fetal and non-natal health effects of maternal prenatal cannabis use. Teams behind both studies were led by researchers at Kaiser Permanente, North Carolina, where the health data was drawn from. Authors said they believe the research represents the largest number of pregnancies with maternal prenatal cannabis use studied.
Authors said their findings align with the bulk of research into childhood development outcomes following maternal cannabis use, although they noted that some past research has suggested a negative association. Similarly, they noted that their findings contrast with a 2023 study suggesting a connection with autism. As scientists work to wrap their arms around the possible risks of maternal cannabis use, law enforcement officials in some jurisdictions are already targeting pregnant individuals for arrest and prosecution as a result of cannabis or other drug use.
A recent report from the reproductive rights organizations, for instance, found that pregnancy-related prosecutions are at an all-time high in the wake of the 2022 Supreme Court decision that ended the nationwide right to abortion. And by far, the most common criminal allegation facing pregnant people is that they use cannabis or other medications during their pregnancies.
The report from the group Pregnancy Justice identified 210 criminal cases filed against people for conduct associated with pregnancy loss, or birth during the first year after High Court's Dobbs ruling, which overturned Roe versus Wade. Of those 203 cases, nearly 97% involved allegations of substance use during pregnancy. Drug use was the sole allegation in 133 of those cases. Cannabis was the second most commonly cited drug in the court charges, following methamphetamines, with allegations of cannabis use appearing in 86 of the 210 cases. In more than a third of those cases, THC use was the only allegation underlying the criminal charges.
Yes. Now, the report says it is significant that in 86 cases, the police or the prosecution alleged that the defendant took some form of THC during her pregnancy. And in 31 of those 86 cases, the only allegation supporting prosecution was THC use. Even more startling, in 5 of those cases, the court file included statements that the defendant had a medical cannabis card, indicating that she was being charged with taking legally prescribed medication.
Notably, rates of prosecution varied strikingly across the country, according to the report. Alabama, for example, was responsible for nearly half of the prosecutions at 104, followed by Oklahoma at 68 and South Carolina at 10. The majority of defendants charged in pregnancy-related cases were also low income, it noted.
In Oklahoma last year, in local news in 2022 began reporting that prosecutors there were targeting pregnant women for using medical cannabis, resulting in felony child neglect charges being filed against 26 mothers. The crime can carry up to a life prison in Oklahoma. Then in July, a state court ruled that people cannot be prosecuted for child neglect for legally using medical cannabis while pregnant. Life in jail.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
In 2022, an Alabama Senate committee approved a bill to force women who want medical cannabis to provide a negative pregnancy test. Wow. Early last year, meanwhile, the National Institute on Drug Abuse director Nora Volkow blasted the criminalization of drug use by pregnant people and new parents, arguing that the resulting stigmatization is harming families and contributing to the overdose crisis.
She said that families need support, not criminalization. People seeking treatment for addictions face additional obstacles, especially if they have children, she wrote. Only a small majority or a small minority of treatment facilities provide childcare, creating yet another obstacle on top of securing transportation, housing, food, and other necessities, all of which can be more difficult for people who are also supporting children. The barriers even get higher for pregnant people. Volkow also noted that what was at the time a demonstrable increase in overdose deaths among people during and immediately during pregnancy, which became the leading cause of death during or shortly after pregnancy, ranking higher than excessive bleeding, cardiovascular conditions, and other well-known complications of pregnancy.
Interesting.
There we go. At the end of the story.
Yeah.
All right. I see we're it's after the top of the hour, too. We still got 2 more stories to go over, so I don't think we're going to get to them. I've got an appointment I got to run to as well. But just so people know that Colorado, they have an expo that seeks to expand awareness of psychedelic therapy, and that the BC bud tenders, they formed a union.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Something I would have mentioned during that Colorado story is that if you are in the Vancouver area, there is the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference happening on November 1st to 3rd with our friends Mark Caron and Stephen Gray. So if you're in the area, come,
stop by. Exactly. Oh, Steve says good morning. Good morning,
Steve. Mr. Mather.
Good morning. All righty. Other than that, I think we're done. And I've got to jump in my car and head out. From the Legacy420.com news desk, that's our P.A.C.E news report for today. And for our buds at the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, Limestone City, Hydroponics.ca, Legacy420.com, and At-Eze.ca. In closing, we'd like to say thank you for watching, listening, or maybe listening. And don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate. And Steve gives us a little wink and a smile. And we'll see you. We'll see you, Steve. We'll be talking to you, and we'll be talking to everybody else. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the P.A.C.E Radio Network here at PACERadio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at PACEradio.net.